Hello, I'm going to read to you from the Pilgrims Progress, Part 1. This is written by John Bunyan. As I walked through the wilderness of this world, I lighted on a certain place where was a den, and I laid me down in that place to sleep. And as I slept, I dreamed a dream. I dreamed, and behold, I saw a man clothed with rags, standing in a certain place with his face from his own house, a book in his hand, and a great burden upon his back. I looked, and I saw him open the book and read therein. And as he read, he wept and trembled, and not being able longer to contain, he broke out with a lamentable cry, saying, "What shall I do?" In this plight, therefore, he went home and refrained himself as long as he could, that his wife and children should not perceive his distress. But he could not be silent long, because that his trouble increased. Wherefore at length he brake his mind to his wife and children, and thus he began to talk to them. "O my dear wife," said he, "and you the little children of my bowels, I, your friend, am in myself undone, by reason of a burden that lieth hard upon me. Moreover, I am for certain informed that this our city will be burned with fire from heaven, in which fearful overthrow both myself with thee, my wife, and you, my sweet babes, shall miserably come to ruin, except, the which yet I see not, some way of escape can be found, whereby we may be delivered." At this his relations were sore amazed, not for that they believed that what he had said to them was true, but because they thought that some frenzied distemper had got into his head. Therefore, it drawing towards night, and they hoping that sleep might settle his brains, with all haste they got him to bed. But the night was as troublesome to him as the day, wherefore instead of sleeping he spent it in sighs and tears. So when the morning is come, they would know how he did. He told them worse and worse. He also set to talking to them again, but they began to be hardened. They also thought to drive away his distemper by harsh and surely carriages to him. Sometimes they would deride, sometimes they would chide, sometimes they would quite neglect him. Wherefore he began to retire himself to his chamber to pray for and pity them, and also to condole his own misery. He would also walk solitary in the fields, sometimes reading and sometimes praying, and thus for some days he spent his time. Now I saw upon a time when he was walking in the fields that he was, as he was wont, reading in this book, and greatly distressed in his mind. And as he read, he burst out, and as he had done before, crying, "What shall I do to be saved?" I saw also that he looked this way and that way, as if he would run, yet he stood still, because, as I perceived, he could not tell which way to go. I looked then and saw a man named Evangelist, coming to him, and asked, "Wherefore dost thou cry?" He answered, "Sir, I perceive by the book in my hand that I am condemned to die, and after that come to judgment, and I find that I am not willing to do the first, nor able to do the second." Then said Evangelist, "Why not willingly to die, since this life is attended by so many evils?" The man answered, "Because I fear that this burden that is upon my back will sink me lower than the grave, and I shall fall into Tophet. And, sir, if I be not fit to go to prison, I am not fit to go to judgment, and from thence to execution, and the thoughts of these things make me cry." Then said Evangelist, "If this be thy condition, why standest thou still?" He answered, "Because I know not whither to go." Then he gave him a parchment roll, and there was written within, "Fly from the wrath to come." The man therefore read it, and looking upon Evangelist very carefully, said, "Whither must I fly?" Then said Evangelist, pointing with his finger over a very wide field, "Do you see the yonder wicket gate?" The man said, "No." Then said the other, "Do you see yonder shining light?" He said, "I think I do." Then said Evangelist, "Keep that light in your eye, and go up directly thereto. So shall you see the gate, at which when you knockest, it shall be told thee what to do." So I saw in my dream that the man began to run, and now he had not run far from his own door. But his wife and children, perceiving it, began to cry after him to return. But the man put his fingers to his ears and ran on, crying, "Life, life, eternal life." So he looked not behind him, but fled towards the middle of the plain. The neighbors also came out to see him run, and as he ran, some mocked, others threatened, and some cried after him to return. And among those that did so, there were two that were resolved to fetch him back by force. The name of the one was Obstinate, and the name of the other was Pliable. Now by this time the man was gone a good distance from them. But however they were resolved to pursue him, which they did, and in a little time they overtook him. Then said the man, Neighbors, wherefore are you come? They said, To persuade you to go back with us. But he said, That can by no means be. You dwell, said he, in the city of destruction, the place also where I was born. I see it to be so, and dying there, sooner or later, you will sink lower than the grave into a place that burns with fire and brimstone. Be content, good neighbors, and go along with me. What? Said Obstinate, and leave our friends and our comforts behind us? Yes, said Christian, for that was his name, because that all which you shall forsake is not worthy to be compared with a little of that I am seeking to enjoy. And if you go along with me and hold it, you shall fare as I myself. For there where I go is enough and to spare. Come away and prove my words. Obstinate. What are the things you seek, since you have all the world to find them? Christian. I seek an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, and that fadeth not away, and it's laid up in heaven and safe there, to be bestowed at the time appointed on them that diligently seek it. Read it so, if you will, in my book. Obstinate. Tush, said Obstinate. Away with your book. Will you go back with us or no? Christian. No, not I, said the other, because I have laid my hand to the plow. Obstinate. Come then, neighbor, Pliable. Let us turn again and go home without him. And there is a company of these crazed-headed coxcombs that when they take a fancy by the end are wiser in their own eyes than 7 men that can render a reason. Pliable. Then said Pliable, Don't revile. If what the good Christian says is true, the things he looks after are better than ours. My heart inclines to go with my neighbor. Obstinate. What? More fool still? Be ruled by me? Go back. Who knows whither such a brain-sick fellow will lead you? Go back, and be wise. Christian. Nay, but do thou come with thy neighbor. Pliable. There are such things to be had, which I spoke of, and many more glories besides. If you believe not me, read here in this book, and for the truth of what is expressed therein. Behold, all is confirmed by the blood of him that made it. Pliable. Well, neighbor, Obstinate, said Pliable, I begin to come to a point. I intend to go along with this good man, and to cast in my lot with him. But my good companion, do you know the way to this desired place? Christian. I am directed by a man whose name is Evangelist to speed me to a little gate that is before us, where we will receive instruction about the way. Pliable. Come then, good neighbor, let us be going. Then they both went together. Obstinate. I will go back to my place, said Obstinate. I will be no companion of such misled, fantastical fellows. Now I saw in the dream that when Obstinate was gone back, Christian and Pliable were talking over the plain, and thus they began their discourse. Christian. Come, neighbor Pliable, how do you do? I am glad you are persuaded to go along with me. Had even Obstinate himself but felt what I have felt of the powers of terrors of what is yet unseen, he would not thus lightly have given us the back. Pliable. Come, neighbor Christian, since there is none but us two here, tell me now further what the things are, and how to be enjoyed, whither we are going. Christian. I can better conceive of them with my mind than speak of them with my tongue, but yet since you are desirous to know, I will read of them in my book. Pliable. And do you think that the words of your book are certainly true? Christian. Yes, verily, for it was made by him that cannot lie. Pliable. Well said. What things are they? Christian. There is an endless kingdom to be inhabited, and everlasting life to be given us, that we may inhabit in the kingdom forever. Pliable. Well said. And what else? Christian. There are crowns of glory to be given us, and garments that will make us shine like the sun in the firmament of heaven. Pliable. This is very pleasant. And what else? Christian. There will be no more crying nor sorrow, for he that is owner of the place will wipe all the tears from our eyes. Pliable. And what company shall we have there? Christian. There shall be There we shall be with seraphims and cherubims, creatures that will dazzle your eyes to look on them. There also you shall meet with thousands and 10,000s that have gone before us to that place. None of them are hurtful, but loving and holy, every one walking in the sight of God and standing in his presence with acceptance forever. In a word, there we shall see the elders with their golden crowns. There we shall see the holy virgins with their golden harps. There we shall see men that by the world were cut in pieces, burnt in flames, eaten of beasts, drowned in the seas, for the love that they bear to the Lord of the place. All well, and clothed with immortality as with a garment. Pliable. The hearing of this is enough to ravish one's heart. But are these things to be enjoyed? How shall we get to be sharers thereof? Christian. The Lord, the governor of the country, recorded that in this book, the substance of which is, if we be truly willing to have it, he will bestow it upon us freely. Pliable. Well, my good companion, glad am I to hear of these things. Come on, let us mend our pace. Christian. I cannot go as fast as I would by reason of this burden that is on my back. Now I saw in my dream that just as they had ended this talk, they drew near to a very miry slough that was in the midst of the plain, and they, being heedless, did both fall suddenly into the bog. The name of the slough was Despond. Here therefore they wallowed for a time, being grievously debauched with dirt. And Christian, because of the burden that was on his back, began to sink in the mire. Pliable. Then said Pliable, Ah, neighbor Christian, where are you now? Christian, truly, said Christian, I do not know. Pliable. At that Pliable began to be offended, and angrily said to his fellow, Is this the happiness you have told me all this while of? If we have such ill spent at our first setting out, what may we expect? Twixt this and our journey's end, may I get out again with my life. You shall possess the brave country alone for me. And with that he gave a desperate struggle or two, and got out of the mire on the side of the slough which was next to his house, and so away he went, and Christian saw him no more. Wherefore Christian was left to tumble in the slough, and despond alone. But still he endeavored to struggle to that side of the slough that was from his house, and next to the wicket gate, the which he did, but could not get out because of the burden that was upon his back. But I beheld in my dream that a man came to him, whose name was Help, and asked him, What did he do? What did he there? Christian. Sir, said Christian, I was bid go this way by a man called Evangelist, who directed me also to yonder gate, that I might escape the wrath to come, and I was going thither, I fell in here. Help. By why did you not look for the steps? Christian. Fear followed me so far that I fled the next way and fell in. Help. Then said he, Give me thy hand. So he gave him his hand, and he drew him out and set him upon sound ground, and bid him go on his way. Then I stepped to him that plucked him out, and said, Sir, wherefore, since over this place is the way which the city of destruction to yonder gate, is it that this plat? Is it not mended, that poor travelers might go thither with more security? And he said unto me, This miry slough is such a place as cannot be mended. It is the descent, whither the scum and the filth that attends conviction for sin doth continually run. And therefore it was called the slough of despond. For still as the sinner is awakened about his lost condition, there ariseth in his soul many fears and doubts and discouraging apprehensions, which all of them get together and set in this place. And this is the reason of the badness of this ground. It is not the pleasure of the king that this place should remain so bad. His laborers also have, by their direction of his majesty's surveyors, been for above the 1600 years employed about this patch of ground, if perhaps it might have been mended. Yea, and to my knowledge, said he, here hath been swallowed up at least 20,000 cartloads, yea, millions of wholesome instructions, that have at all seasons been brought from all place of the king's dominions, and that they can tell, say, they are the best materials to make good ground of the place. If so be it might have been mended, but it is the slough of despond still, and so will be, when they have done what they can. True, there are, by the direction of the lawgiver, certain good and substantial steps placed even though the very midst of this law, but at such time as this place doth much spew out its filth, as it doth against change of weather, these steps are hardly seen, or if they be, men through the dizziness of their heads step besides, and then they are bemired to purpose, notwithstanding the steps be there, but the ground is good when they are once got into the gate. Now I saw in my dream that by this time Pliable was got home to his house. So his neighbors came to visit him, and some of them called him wise man for coming back, and some called him fool for hazarding himself with Christian. Others again did mock at his cowardliness, saying, Surely since you began to venture, I would not have been so base to have given up for a few difficulties. So Pliable sat sneaking among them. But at last he got more confidence, and then they all turned their tails and began to deride poor Christian behind his back, and thus much concerning Pliable. Now as Christian was walking solitarily by himself, he espied one afar off come across over the field to meet him, and their hap was to meet just as they were crossing the way of each other. The gentleman's name that met him was Mr. Worldly Wise Man. He dwelt in his town of carnal policy, a very great town, and also hard by from whence Christian came. This man then meeting with Christian, and having some inkling of him, for Christian setting forth from the city of destruction was much noised abroad, not only in the town where he dwelt, but also it began to be the town talk in some other places. Master Worldly Wise Man, therefore, having some guess of him, by beholding his laborious going, by observing his sighs and groans and the like, began thus to enter into some talk with Christian. Worldly: How now, good fellow, whither away after this burdened manner? Christian: A burdened manner indeed, as I have ever think poor creature had. And whereas you ask me whither away, I tell you, sir, I am going to yonder wicket gate before me. For there, as I am informed, I shall be put in a way to be rid of my heavy burden. Worldly: Hast thou a wife and children? Christian: Yes. But I am so laden with this burden that I cannot take that pleasure in them as formerly. Methinks I am as if I had none. Worldly: Wilt thou hearken to me if I gave thee counsel? Christian: It is good. If it is good, I will, for I stand in need of good counsel. Worldly: I would advise thee then that thou wilt all speed get thyself rid of thy burden, and for thou wilt never be settled in the mind till then, nor canst thou enjoy the benefits of the blessing which God hath bestowed upon you until then. Christian: That is that which I seek for, even to be rid of this heavy burden. But get it off myself I cannot, nor is there any man in our country that can take it off my shoulders. Therefore, I am going this way, as I told you, that I may be rid of the burden. Worldly: Who bid you go this way to be rid of your burden? Christian: A man that appeared to me to be a very great and honorable person. His name, as I remember, is Evangelist. Worldly: I beshrew him for his counsel. There is not a more dangerous and troublesome way in the world than is that unto which he hath directed you, and that thou shalt find, if you wilt be ruled by his counsel, you have met with something, as I perceive already. For I see this dirt of slough of despond is upon you, but that slough is but the beginning of the sorrows that do attend those that go on that way. Hear me, I am older than you. Thou art like to me, meet with in the way which thou goest wearisomeness, painfulness, hunger, perils, nakedness, sword, lions, dragons, darkness, and in a word, death, and what not? These things are certainly true, having been confirmed by many testimonies, and should a man so carelessly cast away by himself by giving heed to a stranger. Christian: Why, sir, this burden upon my back is more terrible to me than are all these things which you have mentioned. Nay, methinks I care not what I meet with in the way, if so be I can also meet with the deliverance from my burden. Worldly: How camest thou by the burden at first? Christian: By reading this book in my hand. Worldly: I thought so. And it's happened unto thee, as to other weak men, who mending with things too high for them, do suddenly fall into thy distractions. With distractions do not only unman men, as thine, I perceive, has done thee, but they run them upon desperate ventures, to obtain they know not what. Let me read that part again. Worldly, I thought so. And it's happened unto thee as to other weak men, who meddling with things too high for them, do suddenly fall into the distractions, which distractions do not only unman man, as thine, I perceive, has done to thee, but they run them upon desperate ventures, to obtain they know not what. Christian, I know what I would obtain. It is easy for my heavy burden. It is ease from a heavy burden. Worldly. But why wilt thou seek for ease this way, seeing so many dangers attend it, especially since, hadst thou but patience to hear me, I could direct thee to the obtaining of what thou desires without the dangers of that thou in this way wilt run thyself into. Yea, and the remedy is at hand. Besides, I will add that instead of those dangers, thou shalt meet with much safety, friendship, and contentment. Christian, sir, I pray open the secret to me. Worldly, why in yonder village, the village is named Morality, there dwells a gentleman whose name is Legality, a very judicious man, and a man of very good name, that has skill to help men off with such burdens as thine are, from their shoulders. Yea, to my knowledge, he hath done a great deal of good this way. Aye, and besides, he hath the skill to cure those that are somewhat crazed in their wits with their burdens. To him, as I said, thou mayest go, and be helped presently. His house is not quite a mile from this place, and if he should not be at home himself, he hath a pretty young man to his son, whose name is Civility, that can do it to speak on, as well as the old gentleman himself. There I say that thou mayest be eased by thy burden, and if thou art not minded to go back to thy former habitation, as indeed I would not wish thee, thou mayest send for thy wife and children to thee, and this village, and where there are houses, now stand empty, and one of which thou mayest have at reasonable rates. Provision, there is also cheap and good, and that which will make thy life more happy is to be sure that thou shalt live by honest and neighbors, in credit and good fashion. Now was Christian somewhat at a stand, but presently he concluded, if this be true, which the gentleman hath said, my wisest course is to take his advice, and with that he thus farther spoke. Christian, sir, which is my way to this honest man's house? Worldly, do you see yonder high hill? Christian, yes, very well. Worldly, by that hill you must go, and the first house you come at is his. So Christian turned out of his way to go to Mr. Legality's house for help. But behold, when he was got down hard by the hill, it seemed so high, and also that side of it that was the next way side, did hang so much over, that Christian was afraid to venture further, lest the hill should fall on his head. Wherefore there he stood still, and wotted not what to do. Also his burden now seemed heavier to him than when he was in his way. There came also flashes of fire of the hill, that made Christian afraid that he should be burned. Here, therefore, he sweat, and did not quake for fear. And now he began to be sorry that he had taken Mr. Worldly Wiseman's counsel. And with that he saw Evangelist coming to meet him, and at the sight also of whom he began to blush for shame. So Evangelist drew nearer and nearer, and coming up to him, he looked upon him with a severe and dreadful countenance, and thus began to reason with Christian. Evangelist, what dost thou here, Christian? Said he. At which words Christian knew not what to answer, wherefore at present he stood speechless before him. Then said Evangelist farther, Art thou not the man that I found crying without the walls of the city of destruction? How is it then that thou art so quickly turned aside, for thou art now out of the way? Christian, I met with a gentleman so soon as I had got over the slough of despond, who persuaded me that I might in the village before me find a man that could take off my burden. Evangelist, what was he? Christian, he looked like a gentleman, and he talked much to me, and got me at last to yield, so I came hither. But when I beheld this hill and how it hangs over the way, I suddenly made a stand, lest it should fall on my head. Evangelist, what said that gentleman to you? Christian, why, he asked me whither I was going, and I told him. Evangelist, And what said he? Christian. He asked if I had a family, and I told him, but said, I am so loaden with this burden that it's on my back that I cannot take pleasure in them as formerly. Evangelist. What said he then? Christian. He bid me with speed get rid of my burden, and I told him 'twas ease that I sought, and said, I am therefore going to yonder gate to receive further direction how I may get to the place of deliverance. So he said that he would show me a better way, and short, not so attended with difficulties as the way, sir, you set me in. Which way, said he, will direct you to a gentleman's house that hath skill to take off these burdens. So I believed him, and turned out of that way into this. If happy, I might soon be eased of my burden. But when I came to this place, and behold things as they are, I stopped for fear, as I said, of danger. But now I know not what to do. Evangelist. Then, said the evangelist, stand still a little, that I may show thee the words of God. So he stood trembling. Then, said evangelist, see that ye refuse not him that speaks. For if they escape not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape, if we turn away from him that speaks from heaven? He said, moreover, now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draws back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. He also did thus apply them. Thou art the man that art running into this misery. Thou hast begun to reject the counsel of the Most High, and to draw back thy foot from the way of peace, even almost to the hazarding of your perdition. Then Christian fell down at his foot as dead, crying, Woe is me, for I am undone. At the sight of which Evangelist caught him by the right hand, saying, All manner of sin and blasphemy shall be forgiven unto men. Be not faithless, but believing. Then did Christian again a little revive, and stood up trembling as at first before Evangelist. Then Evangelist proceeded, saying, Give more counsel heed to the things that I shall tell thee of. I will now show you who it is that deluded you, and who it was also to whom he sent you. The man that met thee is one worldly wise man, and rightly is he so called, partly because he savoureth only the doctrine of this world. Therefore he always goes to the town of morality to church, and partly because he loveth the doctrine best, for it saveth him best from the cross, and because he is of this carnal temper. Therefore he seeks to pervert my ways, though right. Now there are 3 things in this man's counsel that you must utterly abhor: his turning you out of the way, his laboring to render the cross odious to you, and his setting your feet in the way that leadeth unto the administration of death. First, you must abhor his turning you out of the way, yea, and thine own consenting thereto, because this is to reject the counsel of God for the sake of the counsel of worldly wise men. The Lord says, Strive to enter in at the strait gate, the gate to which I send thee. For strait is the gate that leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. From this little wicket gate, from the way thereto, hath this wicked man turned you, to the bringing of thee almost to destruction. Hate therefore his turning you out of the way, and abhor yourself for hearkening to him. Secondly, thou must abhor his laboring to render the cross odious unto you, for you are to prefer it before the treasures in Egypt. Besides, the King of glory hath told thee that he that will save his life will lose it, and he that comes after him and hates not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, you and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. I say therefore, for man to labor to persuade you, that shall be thy death, without which the truth hath said, Thou canst not have eternal life. This doctrine you must abhor. Thirdly, you must hate his setting of your feet in the way that leads to the administration of death. And for this thou must consider to whom he sent you. Also, how unable that person was to deliver you from your burden. He to whom you was sent for ease, being by name legality, is the son of the bondwoman which now is and is in bondage with her children, and which is in mystery this Mount Sinai, which thou hast feared will fall on your head. Now if she with her children are in bondage, how can you expect by them to be made free? This legality therefore is not able to set you free from the burden. No, man was as yet ever rid of his burden to him. No, nor ever is like to be. Ye cannot be justified by the works of the law, for by the deeds of the law no man living can be rid of the burden. Therefore Mr. Worldly Wise Man is an alien, and Mr. Legality is a cheat. And for his son Civility, notwithstanding his simpering looks, he is but a hypocrite, and cannot help you. Believe me, there is nothing in all this noise that thou hast heard of this sottish man, but a design to beguile thee of thy salvation, by turning you from the way in which I had set before thee. After this, Evangelist called aloud to the heavens for confirmation of what he had said, and with that there came words and fire out of the mountain, under which poor Christian stood, and that made the hair of his flesh stand up. The words were thus pronounced, as many as are the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, Cursed is every one that continues not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. Now Christian looked for nothing but death, and began to cry out lamentably, even cursing the time in which he met with Mr. Worldly Wise Man, still calling himself 1,000 fools for hearkening to his counsel. He also was greatly ashamed to think that this gentleman's arguments, flowing only from the flesh, should have the prevalency with him as to cause him to forsake the right way. This done, he applied himself again to Evangelist in words and sense as follows. Christian, Sir, what think you? Is there hope? May I now go back and go up to the wicket gate? Shall I not be abandoned for this, and sent back from thence ashamed? I am sorry. I have hearkened to this man's counsel, but may my sins be forgiven? Evangelist. Then said Evangelist to him, Thy sin is very great, for by it thou hast committed 2 evils. Thou hast forsaken the way that is good, to tread in forbidden paths. Yet will the man at the gate receive thee? For he has good will for men. Only, said he, take heed that thou turn not aside again, lest thou perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Then did Christian address himself to go back, and Evangelist and he had kissed him, gave him one smile, and bid him Godspeed. So he went on with haste. Neither spake he to any man by the way, nor if any asked him, would he vouchsafe them an answer. He went like one that was all the while treading on forbidden ground, and could by no means think himself safe, till again he was got onto the way which he left to follow, Mr. Worldly Wise Man's counsel. So in the process of time, Christian got up to the gate. Now over the gate there was written, Knock, and it shall be opened to you. He knocked, therefore, more than once or twice, saying, May I now enter here? Will be within open to sorry me? May I now enter here? Will be within open to sorry me, though I have been an undeserving rebel? Then shall I not fail to sing his lasting praise on high? At last there came a grave person to the gate, named Goodwill, who asked who was there, and whence he came, and what he would have. Christian. Here is a poor burdened sinner. I come from the city of destruction, but am going to Mount Zion, that I may be delivered from this wrath to come. I would therefore, sir, since I am informed by this gate, that this gate is the way Here's a poor burdened sinner. I come from this city of destruction, but I am going to Mount Zion, that I may be delivered from the wrath to come. I would therefore, sir, since I am informed that by this gate is the way thither, know if you are willing to let me in. Goodwill. I am willing with all my heart, said he, and with that he opened the gate. So when Christian stepped in, the other gave him a pull. Then said Christian, What means that? The other told him, A little distance from this gate, and there is erected a strong castle, of which Beelzebub is the captain, and from thence both he and them that are with him shoot arrows at those that come up to this gate, if happily they may die before they can enter in. Then said Christian, I rejoice and tremble. So when he was got in, the man of the gate asked him, Who directed you thither? Christian. Evangelist bid me come hither and knock, as I did. And he said that you, sir, would tell me what I must do. Goodwill. An open door is set before you, and no man can shut it. Christian. Now I begin to reap the benefits of my hazards. Goodwill. But how is it that you came alone? Christian. Because none of my neighbors saw their danger as I saw mine. Goodwill. Did any of them know of your coming? Christian. Yes, my wife and children saw me at the first and called after me to turn again, and also some of my neighbors stood crying and calling after me to return. But I put my fingers in my ears and so came on my way. Goodwill. But did none of them follow you to persuade you to go back? Christian. Yes, both obstinate and pliable, but when they saw that they could not prevail, obstinate went railing back, but pliable came with me a little way. Goodwill. But why did he not come through? Christian. We indeed both came together until we came at the slough of despond, into which we also suddenly fell, and then was my neighbor Pliable discouraged, and would not adventure farther. Wherefore, getting out again on that side next to his own house, he told me I should possess the brave country alone for him, so he went his way, and I came mine, he after obstinate, and I to this gate. Goodwill. Then said Goodwill, Alas, poor man, is the celestial glory of so small esteem with him, that he counteth it not worth running the hazard of a few difficulties to obtain it. Christian. Truly, said Christian, I have said the truth of Pliable, and if I should say all the truth of myself, it will appear that there is no betterment twixt him and myself. 'Tis true he went back to his own house, but I also turned aside into the way of death, being persuaded thereto by the carnal arguments of one Mr. Worldly Wise Man. Goodwill. Oh, did he light upon you? What he would have you sought for ease at the hands of Mr. Legality? They are both of them very cheap. But did you take his counsel? Christian. Yes, as far as I durst. I went to find out Mr. Legality until I thought that the mountain that stands by the house would have fallen on my head, wherefore there I was forced to stop. Goodwill. That mountain has been the death of many, and will be the death of many more. 'Tis well you escaped being by it dashed in pieces. Christian. What truly I do not know what had become of me there. Had not Evangelist happily met me again, as I was musing in the midst of my dumps. But 'twas God's mercy that he came to me again, for else I had never come hither. But now I am come, such as one as I am, more fit indeed for death by that mountain than thus to stand talking with my Lord. But oh, what a favor it is to me that yet I am admitted entrance here. Goodwill. We make no objections against any, notwithstanding all that they have won before they come hither. They in no wise are cast out, and therefore, good Christian, come a little way with me, and I will teach you about the way you must go. Look before you. Dost thou see this narrow way? That is the way you must go. It was cast upon by the patriarchs, prophets, Christ, and his apostles, and it is as straight as a rule and can make it. And it is straight as a rule can make it. This is the way you must go. Christian. But said Christian, is there no turnings, no windings, by which a stranger may lose his way? Goodwill. Yes, there are many ways, but down upon this. And they are crooked and wide, but thus thou mayest distinguish the right from the wrong, the right only being straight and narrow. Then I said in my dream, the Christian asked him further, if I could not help him off with his burden that was upon his back, for as yet he had not got rid thereof, nor could he by any means get it off by himself. He told him, as to thy burden, be content to bear it until thou comest to the place of deliverance, for there it will fall from your back of itself. Then Christian began to gird up his loins and to address himself to his journey. So the other told him that by that he was got some distance from the gate, he would come at the house of the interpreter, at whose door he should knock, and he would show him excellent things. Then Christian took his leave of his friend, and again bid him Godspeed. Then he went on till he came out of the house of the interpreter, where he knocked, and over at last one came to the door and asked, Who was there? Christian said, "Sir, here is a traveler who is bid by an acquaintance of the good man of this house to call here for my profit. I would therefore speak with the master of the house." So he called him for the master of the house, when after a little while came to Christian and asked him what he would have. I'm going to stop there. I hope you're enjoying Pilgrims Progress, written by John Bunyan. Thank you.